Friday, April 22nd, 1965, 12:13 p.m. Larry and three men were standing in a field. Then, it happened. Larry was dead.
He died of a gunshot wound in the brain.
The nation was shocked. American citizens wanted answers, and the multi-agency team tasked with finding Larry's killer was under extreme pressure the moment news spread.
Additional security is being arranged for the area between now and Sunday.
Within a week, they had arrested and named their suspect, 23-year-old Paul Stoffer Adam. Even 54 years later, the basic facts of the assassination are still contested and debated among internet sleuths, armchair detectives, and conspiracy theorists the world over. They point to failures of a hurried investigation and make claims of a vast conspiracy. Today on Skeleton Realm History, we'll reconstruct the entire timeline leading up to the assassination of Larry and take a closer look at the cultural movements it spawned over the years to see if there's any new blame to be given. When the FBI arrived at the crime scene, Larry's body was laying face down in the field. His arms extended straight out to his sides. 4 bullets would later be recovered in and around Larry's body, 1 inside Larry's leg and 3 which had gone through his body and landed several hundred feet away. Also recovered were 3 rifles gently laid in separate spots on the field, where the footprints of 3 different individuals were each obtained. The rifles were all identical 1955 Winchester Model 88s. It was later discovered that 3 individuals besides Larry had been present in the field during the time of the shooting. They were 65-year-old Wesley Lynn Carlisle, 23-year-old Paul Stoffer Adam, and 14-year-old Jackie Lance Pearl. The crime scene was discovered by an elderly woman, 89-year-old Jane Porson McMichaels, a retired schoolteacher and daughter of George McMichaels, the disgraced mayor of the local town, Porsonville, who was executed in 1903 for selling black market ham and other deli meats to local shops, which turned out to be poisoned, killing hundreds. Jane happened upon Larry's body while walking straight through the field diagonally, claiming she had used the field as a shortcut to get back home, as she had been out all night the night before and that morning, fishing in the river for crawdaddies and collecting them in a large basket which she dropped and left in the field. McMichaels hurried back to her home, several miles away, and called the local police department. When the police reached the crime scene, the case was immediately handed over to the FBI, who promptly arrived and constructed a large temporary dome over the field to protect it from the elements and give them privacy as they analyzed the scene. Within 3 short days, the FBI claimed they had their man, 23-year-old Paul Stoffer Adam. According to the FBI, the case was open and shut. Adam had simply walked into the field where Larry had been standing, not moving and staring straight forward. Adam took 10 steps into the field, aimed his rifle, and fired at Larry, killing him. Adam then set his rifle down and exited the field, then stood in the middle of the dirt road leading up to the area and waited for 6 hours without moving. This was where he eventually was arrested by police.
Once I had a pretty girl, her name...
The masses were largely satisfied with this clean and perfect explanation, which lined up with the FBI's findings. And the deep sadness felt by the American public at the loss of Larry seemed to drown out any doubts some might have about the FBI's conclusions.
Hats off to Larry.
Paul Stoffer Adam was public enemy number 1, and the media quickly voiced the masses' anger. After Adam's arrest, the FBI quickly deconstructed the temporary dome they had set up, and the field became a gathering place for pilgrims seeking to pay tribute to Larry.
And they discussed what they wanted and decided that what they needed was an area where they could meet as a club.
It gives them something to do and something to an outlet for their energies.
It's the place to be and the place to be seen.
Americans gathered in droves for months, holding candlelight vigils for Larry and weeping for hours on end, camping around in the field and even holding music festivals, singing songs about Larry and playing Larry-themed games.
Adam's a drag man. Adam's a bad man. Adam's a drag man.
The owner of the field, Peter David Hickok, a 52-year-old farmer, was at first not so keen on his property becoming a meeting place for Larry fanatics. Though, despite his best efforts, the area became just that, a mecca for Larry lovers who celebrated Larry's life and burned large effigies of Paul Stoffer Adam, which on one occasion set the nearby woods on fire. This obsession with the assassination of Larry became a widespread trend among the American middle class, and in a derisive article published in the June 1965 edition of The New Yorker, columnist Ruth Salinger mockingly titled the fad Larry Mania. 1 month later, the farmer Hickok received a call from John Randolph Hamilton, a wealthy real estate mogul and retired Air Force colonel from New York City who wanted to cash in on the new Larry Mania. Hamilton offered Hickok $5 million for his 8-acre field, a sum that Hickok could not refuse. Hamilton's plan was to create Larryland, a 10-acre theme park and event space devoted to the love of Larry, the celebration of his life, and the hatred of Paul Stoffer Adam. In the August of 1965, construction began. First, the entire field was burned. Hamilton then had 300 sticks of dynamite placed in the field in a grid pattern, which he then detonated, blowing it up completely, entirely excavating it down to nearly 25 feet. The site was ready for the construction of Larryland. The media was abuzz with positive affirmations of Hamilton and his new project, so much so that something happened which many ignored: the release of the Larry Death Report, short for Locating a Realistic Reason and Yielding a Definitive Encompassing Assassination Theory, honestly. The report was an 11,000-page, 9-volume detailed explanation of the FBI's findings in the case of Larry's assassination. The report was full of previously unknown facts and findings. The information shocked those paying attention, which amounted to nearly no one. The report's release occurred on September 25, 1965, which was coincidentally the opening day for Larryland. Hamilton had planned an incredibly elaborate ceremony for the park's opening, including a massive fireworks display and even a detailed reenactment of the assassination. However, things did not go off as planned. At about 9 a.m. that morning, Hamilton addressed the crowd, revealing his biggest surprise for the ceremony: that he would have Adam himself appear on stage. The crowd would be able to see him in the flesh and voice their concerns. Hamilton even had a massive PA installed to allow the American public to question Adam on his motives and methods. At exactly 9:25 a.m., Adam was rolled out in a large metal cage and placed at the center of the stage directly to Hamilton's left, as he stood at the podium. The crowd of about 3,000 people went into a frenzy. Hamilton attempted to ease the crowd's anger, but to no avail. Then, at 9:28 a.m. on September 25, 1965, 4 shots rang out. Adam dropped inside the cage and the crowd gasped. They were set into another frenzy. Hamilton was also hit and dropped immediately, his head exploding into a cloud of pink dust. Both men died. The crowd then stormed the stage and ripped Adam's body to shreds, then went on to burn the entire park down. Multiple witnesses reported the shots that killed Adam came from above, some claiming a helicopter, but these have been largely discredited and attributed to confusion related to the Portsonville helicopter stunt show that was being held in an adjacent field that morning. Media coverage of the event was extensive, so extensive that the release of the Larry Report went completely unmentioned. It wasn't until 1994 that the public gained interest in the subject of Larry's assassination again, due to a special which aired on Me More TV called Who Killed Larry?
It was like a red halo, a red circle with bright matter in the middle of it. It just went like that.
There was a lot of cursing going on. I was embarrassed. A lot of what I thought was too foul of a language to be going on.
Though influential among Larry scholars and conspiracy theorists, the film is virtually unknown, and many of the details it revealed from the Larry Death Report are still relatively unknown by the general public. Let's take a look at some of those details. Who was Paul Stoffer Adam? Today, the name Paul Stoffer Adam is synonymous with tragedy and injustice, but many see him as an innocent man, framed by a complex conspiracy. Adam's early life was one of continuous hardship. Born orphaned from unknown parents on April 22, 1942 in Missouri City, Texas, he would spend his entire youth entangled with the law. Adam was institutionalized in various juvenile centers across the Midwest more than 80 times before he turned 14. Sleeping on the streets and in decrepit boarding houses, Adam was known to perform a deceptive street con known as stiff slapping. He would lay in the gutter, imitating a corpse until he was brought to the local morgue, presumed dead. There he would drink the morgue's supply of ethanol and repeatedly slap the interred bodies. his pained howls echoing through the building until his inevitable arrest. At the age of 15, Adam would find a mentor and guardian in Dr. Klaus Verschworer, a successful alkaline expert employed by Burlow Chemical. For several years, Adam joined Verschworer on work-related trips with destinations including Guatemala, Iran, the Congo, and Florida. Following Adam's arrest, Dr. Verschworer would condemn Adam's actions, even submitting to authorities a confession letter typed by Adam on Dr. Verschworer's own Metoi Supertype typewriter. The doctor would later recollect warning signs he regrettably overlooked.
It is undeniable now that the malleable brains of downtrodden youth are routinely corrupted, and done so en masse by pulp publications, dime store magazines depicting deranged crime and torture. Paul Adam read these without my knowledge. He collected these magazines in secret, and these undoubtedly shaped his mind into that of a killer.
And even here, conspiracists have manifested a detail to shuttle doubt. They point to Dr. Verschworer's documented links to the pulp magazine publishing business. Throughout the 1950s, Verschworer was advisor to a number of popular printed pulp publications including Black Mask, Tales of Stabbing, Sick Cop, and Sexual Kidnappings. He may have even contributed writing to these magazines, as conspiracists have identified an anonymous author pseudonymized as Doc V, who wrote dozens of seedy crime stories, specifically one titled Creating a Killer, which describes a young mentally disabled manservant who is manipulated by his elder guardian into assassinating a public figure named Barry in a large field. The parallels stop there though, as the author then elaborates on torturing and killing his young manservant for another 14 pages. Paul Stoffer Adam's actions on the day of the assassination have been read like tea leaves by conspiracists for decades. Were they the actions of a man performing his part of a secret plot? Or just the erratic movements of a disturbed and violence-prone man? Let's take a look at his documented movements on April 22, 1965. At 8 a.m., Adam arrived by bus to Porsonville from Virginia, an 8-hour trip. Passengers on the bus reported that a tall, blonde-haired man approached every passenger one at a time, introducing himself as Paul Stewart Adams, and repeating the phrase, "Boy, I hate Larry. I would like to kill Larry. No good Larry." The man would then wait for a response, staring intensely into the eyes of the passenger until they verbally acknowledged his statement. Adam was next seen at Porson's Diner eating breakfast at 9:30 a.m. Patrons of the diner gave multiple statements that an extremely muscular red-headed man wearing leather gloves handed out business cards to every person in the diner. The cards read only, "Paul Stoffer Adam." Adam then ordered 4 cups of coffee to go, exited the diner, and entered the passenger side of a black 1963 Ford Fairline. At 9:45 that morning, Paul Stoffer Adam was released from Porsonville jail. He had turned himself in to authorities the night before, confessing to shoplifting. At 11 a.m., Adam was seen driving a candy apple red Chevy Impala convertible, gleefully honking the horn and driving up and down Porson Street multiple times, the main thoroughfare in town. At noon, 13 minutes before the assassination, Adam would be spotted waiting tables at Porsonville Diner. The next time Adam was seen, he was detained by police for the murder of Larry, and the rest is history. Conspiracists will focus on the slight discrepancies among eyewitness accounts that day, though they conveniently leave out important facts. For one, every single member of the Porsonville Police Department was on their first day on the job. 24 hours earlier, in an attempt to fight corruption on his force, Sheriff Bart Ernest Matthews Jr. purged his entire police force and replaced them with local theater actors. These inexperienced police officers are often ignored by conspiracists, but they are likely the cause of the wide-ranging description of Adam's appearances that day. Jane Porson McMichaels. Jane Porson McMichaels was the first person to discover Larry's body. Jane was 89 years old when she discovered Larry and died the very next day of old age on her 90th birthday. Jane had been fishing for crawdads the night before on the Opachika River, famous for the succulent river creature, and home to a special breed of crawdads which were extremely easy to catch. McMichael's father, George McMichaels, had been the first mayor of the nearby town of Porsonville, a sleepy railroad stop famous for its restaurants, where several famous outlaws of the Old West had frequented and murdered individuals in. A famous shootout occurred there in 1885 when George was mayor. Coincidentally, the shootout occurred a mere 100 feet from the site of Larry's assassination, and was between George McMichaels himself and the famous outlaw Tommy Spank Vernon. Vernon had robbed over 600 banks that summer, and finally met his demise after a 24-hour shootout outside town. Vernon ended up killing the sheriff, Bart Ernest Matthews, before finally being gunned down by McMichaels. Porsonville had become a cesspool for outlaws and organized crime over the years, and though McMichaels was seen as a hero for bringing down old Spank Vernon, he himself was tried and killed by the local townsfolk 18 years later. McMichaels was tried and sentenced to death by hanging when it was found out he had taken bribes to allow poisoned meats to be sold at the local general store, which nearly completely destroyed the town, killing over 99% of its inhabitants. Because of this event, crawdads became the staple food source in the area, due to a fear of repeat poisoned meat fiascos. Every day, hundreds of crawdad fishers descend on the Opachika River, and the day which Jane had been fishing was no different. Information in the Larry Death Report reveals that in the dozens of interviews taken that day, not a single crawdad fisherman who was there actually saw Jane that morning on the river. Many question why, then, the report lists this clearly as what she had been doing immediately before coming upon Larry's corpse. Wesley Lynn Carlisle. Jane Porson McMichael's cousin, the nephew of disgraced Mayor George McMichaels, 65-year-old Wesley Lynn Carlisle, was also in the field during Larry's assassination. He died 4 days later in a welding accident. Carlisle was a well-known mobster in the area. In the 1920s, he had run booze out of Porsonville for the Borbingo family across the region and amassed a crew of over 300 henchmen. Since there was not much mafia activity in the area, Carlisle became the de facto eyes and ears of the Borbingo family and gained their total and complete trust. That is, until 1932 when Carlisle flipped, becoming an informant for the FBI, and received a reduced sentence for his activity working for the Borbingos in exchange for information on Johnny Borbingo, the Don of the family. Borbingo went down quickly, and Carlisle served his reduced 10-year sentence, leaving prison finally in 1942. For the next 23 years, Carlisle entered into the Witness Protection Program and worked an astonishing 86 different small jobs in 43 states. He traveled to Thailand 159 times for vacations, and as a strange hobby took and developed his own photos of military aircraft, particularly one specific plane from the 1940s, the Northrop F-15A Black Widow reconnaissance plane. The exact same plane that John Randolph Hamilton had piloted during World War II while serving in the United States Air Force. Originally, it was stated that Carlisle was John Richard Stevens, the alias and identity given to him by the Witness Protection Program. It wasn't until the Larry Death Report was made public that Carlisle's real identity was revealed. Jackie Lance Pearl. Jackie Lance Pearl was 14 and in the field on the day of Larry's death. She is now 70 years old and lives in Fresno, California with her husband Rick Palmer McDonald. The details of Larry's autopsy were among the 11,000 pages of the Larry Death Report and wouldn't be scrutinized in totality until the 1994 Who Killed Larry special. Several details of the autopsy stood out as strange to conspiracists. The bullet reportedly fired by Adam was found lodged in the center of Larry's brain. While this seems exactly where one would expect to find the kill shot, conspiracists have focused on a specific quality of this bullet. It was unfired. The projectile found in Larry's brain was in fact a complete round. The bullet, cartridge, and primer were in perfect condition and could have been mistaken for having just rolled off the assembly line, save for one mark on the bullet's tip, the handwritten initials AG. The initials have never been definitively linked to their signer, but many conspiracists claim with certainty that they know the origin. Augustus Harper Graham, a man who attended a magic show in Las Vegas a week before Larry's death. This show was put on by popular Vegas stage magician Haunted Charles, whose grand finale often consisted of catching a bullet in his teeth, the tip of which was initialed by an audience member before being fired. Conspiracists still focus on Haunted Charles's founding role in the secret government mind control program, Brainbus, and point to many of his extensive publications on hypnosis, his ability to levitate, and his connections to the 1969 assassination of Kevin and Jordan. Consensus among medical examiners and coroners is the initials stand for all good, and were signed during the autopsy to denote the agreeable nature of non-organic items recovered in the body. Another anomaly was found during the autopsy. Lodged deep in Larry's abdomen, between his lungs, was a very small gun. It appeared to be a 1/16th scale replica of the very weapon Adam had used to kill Larry. Surprisingly, it was fully functional, with the bore of its carefully rifled barrel no wider than the tip of a ballpoint pen. This small rifle also had no sign of an entry wound, and appeared to be connected to Larry's vital organs by a network of connective tissue and arteries. Conspiracies may appear to be harmless speculation, a sort of game for the obsessed, but they cause real-world damage, tainting the facts and steeping our institutions in mistrust for generations. Larry is still beloved by the American people today, but his family has never had a moment free of outsiders praising Larry's killer as a hero. So the next time you hear about a theory that sounds too wild to be true, just take a moment to think, what if I was Larry's son William? Even though it's important to ask questions and to be curious in general, the assassination of Larry and the investigation that followed were moments in American history which should not be prodded, questioned, or scrutinized to the degree which they have. Intense and useless inquiry only obfuscates the facts that Paul Stoffer Adam alone killed Larry.
This program was paid for in part by the Verschworer Foundation, Burlow Chemical, the Fanmayer Group, the Orbsmann Foundation, the Justice for Larry Syndicate, and by contributions from viewers like you.